The 1980s were supposed to be the dark ages of American performance. Emissions regulations, fuel economy mandates, and insurance costs had killed the muscle car era, leaving behind anemic engines and broken dreams. But some manufacturers refused to give up entirely, building cars that were genuinely dangerous. Some because they were too slow, others because they were too fast, and all of them because they lacked the safety systems modern drivers take for granted. Today, we're counting down 15 dangerous muscle cars made in the 1980s. Machines that could kill you through disappointment or through raw, uncontrolled power. From Corvettes that betrayed their heritage to turbocharged monsters that overwhelmed their chassis, these are the 80s muscle cars that demanded respect and punished mistakes. This is the story of American performance at its most treacherous. Number 15, 1989, Ford Mustang LX 5.0. The 1989 Ford Mustang LX 5.0 represented American performance emerging from the malaise era with vengeance. The 5-liter V8 produced 225 horsepower, genuinely strong output for 1989 that made the Mustang brutally fast. But that speed came without modern safety systems, creating something genuinely dangerous for inexperienced drivers who didn't understand the Fox body's limits. The 5-liter featured fuel injection that provided instant throttle response and strong power throughout the RPM range. The engine delivered its power smoothly up to around 5,000 RPM, creating acceleration that felt violent compared to most 80s cars. Quarter-mile times in the low 14-second range, with trap speeds exceeding 95 miles per hour, made the Mustang genuinely quick, capable of embarrassing more expensive sports cars. The sequential fuel injection system featured individual injectors for each cylinder, providing precise fuel metering that created smooth power delivery and instant throttle response without the hesitation that plagued carbureted engines from earlier years. The engine management computer monitored dozens of parameters, including throttle position, engine speed, intake air temperature, and coolant temperature, constantly adjusting fuel delivery and ignition timing to optimize performance under all conditions. The compression ratio was 9.0 to 1, high enough to extract decent power, but conservative enough to run on regular unleaded gasoline without detonation issues that could damage the engine during aggressive driving. The camshaft profile was moderately aggressive with increased duration and lift compared to standard 5-liter engines, creating a distinctive burble at idle that announced the Mustang's performance intentions to anyone within earshot. The cylinder heads featured improved port designs that flowed air more efficiently than earlier versions, allowing the engine to breathe deeply at high RPM when lesser engines were starving for oxygen and losing power. The intake manifold was a sophisticated design with tuned runners that optimized airflow and created strong mid-range torque, providing the instant acceleration that made the Mustang feel so responsive during normal driving and stoplight encounters. The exhaust system featured tubular headers feeding into dual exhaust with high-flow catalytic converters and performance mufflers that created the distinctive 5-liter sound, a deep, aggressive rumble that built to a roar at full throttle. The ignition system used electronic controls with sophisticated timing curves that maximize power while preventing detonation, ensuring reliable performance even during sustained high RPM operation or hot weather driving. The cooling system was adequately sized with large capacity radiator and efficient fan that maintained proper operating temperatures even during aggressive driving or stop-and-go traffic in summer heat. The oil pan was baffled to prevent oil starvation during hard cornering and sustained high RPM operation, ensuring proper lubrication even when the Mustang was driven aggressively on winding roads or drag strips. The 0 to 60 time fell into the mid-5-second range, genuinely quick acceleration that placed the Mustang among the fastest American cars available in 1989, and comparable to European sports cars, costing significantly more. The engine's power delivery was linear and predictable from idle to redline, building progressively rather than coming on suddenly, which made the Mustang feel controllable, even though it was genuinely quick by contemporary standards. The fuel economy was reasonable for a performance car, typically returning 18 to 22 miles per gallon in mixed driving when operated moderately, making the Mustang practical for daily use, unlike thirstier muscle cars from earlier eras. The 5 liters reliability was excellent when properly maintained, with the engine capable of accumulating well over 100,000 miles without major failures if oil changes were performed regularly and maintenance schedules were followed. The aftermarket support for the 5-liter engine was extensive, with countless companies offering performance parts ranging from simple bolt-ons to complete engine rebuilds, making it easy and relatively affordable to extract even more power from the already capable platform. The danger came from chassis limitations that couldn't match the engine's capabilities. The braking system featured front discs and rear drums, adequate for normal driving but completely overwhelmed during aggressive use. Hard stops from high speeds resulted in brake fade, increased stopping distances, and genuine terror as the pedal went soft. The suspension was basic with live rear axle that could break loose suddenly and violently during hard acceleration or mid-corner throttle applications. The handling was primitive by modern standards. The Mustang featured minimal electronic aids. No traction control, no anti-lock brakes, no stability systems. Pushing hard meant managing weight transfer manually, controlling throttle carefully to avoid breaking the rear loose, and accepting that the car could spin without warning if you made mistakes. The 5-liter Mustang was genuinely fast, but genuinely dangerous, rewarding skill, while punishing overconfidence brutally. Number 14, 1988, Pontiac Firebird, Formula 350. The 1988 Pontiac Firebird Formula 350 combined third-generation Firebird styling with a 350 cubic inch V8, producing 225 horsepower. The Formula looked genuinely fast with aggressive styling and performance credentials, but the heavy body and middling performance created dangerous mismatch between appearance and actual capabilities that could catch drivers by surprise. The 350 featured tuned port injection that provided smooth power delivery and adequate performance. The engine produced its power reliably throughout the RPM range, creating acceleration that felt adequate rather than exciting. Quarter-mile times in the mid-15-second range were respectable but not thrilling, placing the Formula firmly in middle-tier performance that couldn't match what the styling suggested. The danger came from expectations versus reality. The third-generation Firebird looked genuinely exotic, with its wedge-shaped profile and aggressive details. Drivers seeing the Formula expected Corvette-level performance, but the reality was disappointment. The heavy body, weighing close to 3,400 pounds, meant the 225 horsepower felt stretched trying to move the mass with authority. The handling was adequate for the era, with independent rear suspension providing better control than live-axle competitors. But the weight distribution was nose-heavy, creating understeer and sluggish turn-in that made aggressive driving unrewarding. The brakes were adequate for normal use, but marginal during spirited driving when the Formula's weight created momentum difficult to control. The Formula was dangerous because it promised more than it delivered, creating situations where drivers pushed harder than the car's capabilities allowed. Number 13, 1987 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS Aerocoupe. The 1987 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS Aerocoupe featured dramatic aerodynamic styling inspired by NASCAR racing, but underneath lived a 305 cubic inch V8, producing just 180 horsepower. The Aerocoupe looked genuinely fast with its fastback roofline and aggressive proportions, but the performance was dangerously slow compared to what the styling suggested, creating treacherous mismatch between appearance and capability. The 305 featured throttle body fuel injection that provided adequate reliability but uninspiring performance. The engine produced its modest power smoothly, creating acceleration that felt adequate for normal driving but disappointing when you tried pushing hard. Quarter-mile times in the high 16 to low 17-second range were genuinely slow, placing the Aerocoupe firmly in family sedan territory despite NASCAR-inspired appearance. The danger came from styling creating expectations the drivetrain couldn't fulfill. The Aerocoupe's fastback roofline was designed to reduce drag at NASCAR speeds, creating distinctive appearance that suggested serious performance. Buyers saw the styling and assumed genuine muscle, but reality was crushing disappointment. The weight exceeded 3,500 pounds, and the modest engine meant sluggish acceleration that contradicted every visual cue. The handling was typical for front-wheel drive-based G-body cars. Soft suspension, vague steering, and body roll that made spirited driving unrewarding. The brakes were adequate for normal use, but nothing special. The Aerocoupe was dangerous because it looked fast enough to encourage aggressive driving that the chassis and drivetrain simply couldn't support safely. Drivers expecting NASCAR performance found family sedan dynamics, creating situations where capability gaps caused problems. Number 12, 1987 Buick GNX. The 1987 Buick GNX takes 12th position not because it was slow. Quite the opposite. The GNX was legendarily fast with its 3.8-liter turbocharged V6, producing 276 horsepower and massive torque that made it genuinely brutal. The GNX could run mid-13-second quarter miles and embarrass Corvettes. But that speed came without traction control or stability systems, creating something genuinely dangerous. The turbocharged V6 produced massive torque that overwhelmed the rear tires effortlessly. The turbocharger built boost aggressively, creating violent acceleration that could break traction in first, second, and even third gears on anything less than perfect pavement. The GNX featured upgraded suspension and limited slip differential, but even those improvements couldn't fully contain the engine's brutal output. The torque output exceeded 500 pound-feet at relatively low RPM, creating a wall of force that hit the rear wheels with violence that narrow tires and primitive suspension couldn't manage effectively, especially when boost built suddenly during mid-corner throttle applications. The turbocharger was larger and more aggressive than the standard Grand National unit, building boost more quickly and maintaining higher pressures that created power delivery feeling more like detonation than smooth acceleration. The intercooler was upgraded to handle the increased heat from higher boost levels, but even with improved cooling, the intake temperatures rose during sustained aggressive driving, reducing power and increasing detonation risk. The tire compound and size were inadequate for the power levels, with relatively narrow rubber that was designed more for appearance and ride comfort than providing the traction necessary to contain over 500 pound-feet of turbocharged torque. The transmission was a modified version of the standard automatic, with improved clutch packs and valve body calibration. But even these upgrades struggled to handle the massive torque spikes when boost hit suddenly under full throttle. The chassis reinforcements included additional bracing and upgraded bushings, but the basic G-body platform was designed for luxury sedans rather than high-performance applications, creating fundamental limitations that no amount of upgrading could completely overcome. The danger was raw power without electronic nannies. The GNX had no traction control, no stability control, nothing to prevent the rear end from stepping out violently when boost came on, or when you hit bumps mid-corner. The turbo lag meant the power came suddenly rather than progressively. You'd be rolling along normally when boost built, and suddenly 500 pound-feet of torque hit the rear wheels without warning. The handling was adequate for the era, but primitive by modern standards. The GNX could corner reasonably well, but the sudden power delivery and rear-wheel drive meant drivers needed constant attention and quick reactions. Lifting off throttle mid-corner could snap the rear around violently. The GNX was genuinely fast, some of the quickest American performance available in 1987, but it demanded skill and respect that not all buyers possessed. Number 11, 1986, Buick Regal Grand National. The 1986 Buick Regal Grand National proved that turbocharging could resurrect American performance, featuring a 3.8-liter turbocharged V6, producing 235 horsepower. The Grand National was brutally fast for 1986, but the combination of rear-wheel drive, powerful turbo engine, and complete absence of traction aids created something genuinely dangerous for drivers who didn't understand turbo lag or weight transfer. The turbocharged V6 delivered power differently than naturally aspirated engines. At low throttle, the Grand National felt docile and ordinary, but bury the throttle and the turbocharger spooled up, building boost that created sudden, violent acceleration that could overwhelm rear tires instantly. The torque output was massive, well over 300 pound-feet, delivered through a chassis designed for luxury rather than performance. The danger came from turbo unpredictability and poor traction. The Grand National featured narrow tires relative to its power output, creating traction limitations that meant wheel spin was constant during aggressive acceleration. The live rear axle could hop and skip during hard launches, making straight-line acceleration an adventure. The turbo lag meant power came suddenly rather than progressively, giving drivers little warning before boost hit and tires broke loose. The handling was adequate for normal driving, but became treacherous when pushed hard. The suspension was soft with substantial body roll. The steering was vague and slow. The combination of sudden turbo power, rear-wheel drive, and soft suspension meant the Grand National could snap sideways without warning if you weren't careful. The Grand National was genuinely quick, capable of low 15-second quarter miles, but it demanded respect and punished mistakes with sudden, violent oversteer. Number 10, 1985 Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. The 1985 Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe represented Ford's attempt at sophisticated turbo performance, featuring a 2.3-liter turbocharged inline-4 producing 155 horsepower. The Turbo Coupe combined turbo power with independent rear suspension, but turbo lag and reliability issues made it risky to drive and genuinely dangerous when the turbocharger failed catastrophically at high speeds. The turbocharged four-cylinder delivered power in waves rather than smoothly. At low throttle, the Thunderbird felt genuinely slow, with the small displacement providing minimal power. But when the turbo spooled up, boost transformed the character completely, creating sudden acceleration that felt violent compared to the normal docile behavior. The transition between off-boost and on-boost was abrupt, creating unpredictable power delivery. The danger came from turbo lag and reliability problems. The transition from no power to sudden boost could catch drivers by surprise, especially during cornering when sudden power application could break traction unexpectedly. The turbocharger and related systems proved troublesome, with failures that could strand drivers or create dangerous situations when components failed at highway speeds or during aggressive driving. The handling was sophisticated for 1985, with independent rear suspension providing better control than live axle competitors. But the unpredictable power delivery made the Turbo Coupe treacherous to drive quickly. The sudden boost could overwhelm tires mid-corner, sending the car spinning if drivers weren't prepared. The Turbo Coupe was dangerous, not because it was too fast, but because the power delivery was too unpredictable to trust completely. Number 9, 1985 Chevrolet El Camino SS. The 1985 Chevrolet El Camino SS combined muscle car styling with pickup utility, featuring a 305 cubic inch V8, producing 180 horsepower. The SS package added graphics and appearance details suggesting performance, but the reality was dangerously slow acceleration that contradicted the aggressive styling and created hazardous situations. When drivers expected capability, the El Camino couldn't deliver. The 305 featured throttle body fuel injection, providing adequate reliability but uninspiring performance. The engine produced its modest power smoothly, but moving the El Camino's substantial weight, over 3,700 pounds, meant sluggish acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the high 16 to low 17-second range were genuinely slow, placing the SS firmly in family sedan performance territory despite muscle car graphics. The danger came from styling and badging, creating expectations of performance. The SS graphics, stripes, and aggressive appearance suggested genuine muscle car capability. Drivers seeing the El Camino SS expected quick acceleration and responsive performance, but reality was crushing disappointment. The weight distribution was poor, with substantial mass over the rear axle from the bed, creating handling characteristics that felt unusual and unpredictable. The handling was typical for truck-based vehicles. Soft suspension, vague steering, and body motions that made spirited driving unrewarding and potentially dangerous. The brakes were adequate for normal use, but marginal when trying to slow the heavy El Camino from speed. The SS was dangerous because it looked like something it wasn't, encouraging driving styles the chassis and drivetrain couldn't support safely. Number 8, 1984 Dodge Charger 2.2. The 1984 Dodge Charger 2.2 represented Dodge's misguided attempt to resurrect the Charger nameplate using a front-wheel drive economy car platform. The 2.2-liter inline-4 produced just 110 horsepower, creating something dangerously weak that wore one of Dodge's most legendary nameplates, while delivering performance that would embarrass economy cars. The inline-4 was strangled by emissions equipment and designed primarily for fuel economy rather than performance. 110 horsepower was genuinely pathetic, producing acceleration that felt slow in every situation. The front-wheel drive configuration meant torque steer during hard acceleration, though with such modest power that was rarely an issue. Quarter-mile times exceeded 18 seconds, genuinely slow performance that placed the Charger among the weakest cars available. The danger came from the Charger name creating expectations of muscle car performance. Buyers hearing Dodge Charger remembered legendary HEMI-powered machines from the muscle car era. But the reality was front-wheel drive econobox, with styling trying desperately to suggest sportiness. The weight was modest, around 2,600 pounds, but even that couldn't help the anemic four-cylinder create respectable performance. The handling was typical for small front-wheel drive cars, adequate but uninspiring. The Charger could navigate corners adequately, but provided no driving excitement or engagement. The real danger was reputation damage. Using the Charger name on something so weak and compromised was genuinely hazardous to Dodge's credibility. The 2.2 Charger was dangerous because it promised everything and delivered nothing, creating disappointment that could lead to risky driving, trying to extract performance that simply didn't exist. Number 7. 1984 Pontiac Grand Prix 2+2. The 1984 Pontiac Grand Prix 2+2 was a NASCAR homologation special, featuring aerodynamic modifications, including fastback roofline and specific rear window angle. But underneath the race-inspired styling lived a 305 cubic inch V8 producing just 165 horsepower, creating dangerously underpowered performance that couldn't match what the aggressive appearance suggested. The 305 featured carburation and tuning that emphasized reliability over power. The engine produced its modest output smoothly, but moving the Grand Prix's substantial weight, over 3,500 pounds, meant genuinely slow acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the high 17 to low 18-second range were embarrassing for anything claiming NASCAR connections or sporting pretensions. The danger came from appearance creating expectations of race car performance. The 2+2's aerodynamic modifications were designed to make the Grand Prix competitive in NASCAR racing, creating distinctive styling that suggested genuine performance capability. Buyers expected something approaching race car dynamics, but reality was family sedan performance with minor suspension upgrades that couldn't overcome fundamental lack of power. The handling was typical for G-body cars: soft suspension, vague steering, and substantial body roll. The aerodynamic modifications helped at NASCAR speeds, but provided minimal benefit during normal driving. The 2+2 was dangerous because the NASCAR connection created expectations the street version couldn't fulfill, encouraging aggressive driving that the underpowered drivetrain and soft chassis couldn't support safely. Pontiac built the 2+2 to meet NASCAR rules, but street versions were compromised machines that looked far faster than they actually were. Number 6. 1983 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS. The 1983 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS represented Chevrolet's attempt to resurrect the Supersport nameplate for the 80s, featuring NASCAR-inspired styling but dangerously mismatched performance. The 305 cubic inch V8 produced just 180 horsepower, creating acceleration that couldn't justify the aggressive appearance or legendary SS badging. The 305 featured carburation and tuning that emphasized emissions compliance over performance. The engine produced its modest power smoothly throughout the RPM range, but moving the Monte Carlo's substantial weight, over 3,500 pounds, meant sluggish acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the high 16s to low 17-second range were genuinely slow, placing the SS in family sedan territory despite aggressive styling. The danger came from NASCAR styling creating performance expectations. The Monte Carlo SS featured bold graphics, ground effects, and styling cues borrowed from NASCAR racing that suggested genuine muscle car capability. The distinctive appearance made people assume strong performance, but reality was crushing disappointment. The weight and modest power combined to create acceleration that felt inadequate in every situation. The handling was typical for G-body cars: soft suspension, vague steering, and substantial body roll that made spirited driving unrewarding. The brakes were adequate for normal use, but nothing special. The Monte Carlo SS was dangerous because it looked genuinely fast, encouraging driving styles the chassis and drivetrain couldn't support. The mismatch between appearance and capability could lead to dangerous situations, when drivers expected performance that simply didn't exist. Number 5, 1982 Dodge Mirada CMX. The 1982 Dodge Mirada CMX represented Dodge's confused attempt at creating a sporty personal luxury coupe during the depths of the Malaise era. The 318 cubic inch V8 produced just 130 horsepower, genuinely pathetic output that made the Mirada dangerously slow, despite marketing suggesting sporty character and performance capability. The 318 was strangled by emissions equipment and designed for fuel economy rather than performance. 130 horsepower from over 300 cubic inches was embarrassing, creating acceleration that felt slow in every situation. The Mirada weighed over 3,300 pounds, and the anemic engine meant genuinely sluggish performance. Quarter-mile times approached 19 seconds, slower than many economy cars, and genuinely dangerous when trying to merge onto highways or pass slower traffic. The danger came from styling and marketing, suggesting capability the Mirada couldn't deliver. The CMX package featured graphics, upgraded trim, and appearance details, trying to create sporty character. The styling was formal and upscale, suggesting personal luxury rather than economy car roots. Buyers expected adequate performance from a V8-powered coupe, but reality was crushing disappointment that could create hazardous situations. The handling was typical for Chrysler's J-body platform: soft suspension, vague steering, and substantial body roll. The brakes were adequate for normal use, but marginal when trying to slow the heavy Mirada from speed. The Mirada CMX was dangerous because it was genuinely too slow for safe highway driving during the era when speed limits were being raised and traffic moved faster. The combination of heavy weight and anemic power created situations where the Mirada couldn't keep up with traffic flow, creating hazards for both driver and surrounding vehicles. Number 4, 1982 Ford Mustang GT. The 1982 Ford Mustang GT represented the Fox body's early attempt at performance credibility, but the 5-liter V8 produced just 157 horsepower, genuinely weak output that made the GT dangerous because it looked genuinely fast but couldn't deliver. The styling promised speed, but emissions regulations and conservative tuning strangled performance completely. The 5-liter featured carburation and tuning that prioritized emissions, compliance, and fuel economy over power. 157 horsepower was embarrassing for a 5-liter V8, creating acceleration that felt adequate rather than exciting. Quarter-mile times in the high 16s to low 17-second range were disappointing, placing the GT among the slowest cars wearing performance credentials. The danger came from appearance creating expectations. The Fox body Mustang looked genuinely sporty, with its angular styling and aggressive proportions. The GT package added stripes, scoops, and performance details that suggested genuine muscle car capability. Buyers seeing the Mustang GT expected quick acceleration and responsive performance, but reality was disappointment that could lead to dangerous situations when actual capability didn't match expectations. The handling was basic Fox body with live rear axle and minimal sophistication. The suspension was adequate for normal driving, but nothing special. The brakes were marginal for the speeds the Mustang could achieve. The GT was dangerous because it looked fast enough to encourage aggressive driving that the underpowered engine and basic chassis couldn't support safely. The mismatch between appearance and capability created situations where drivers pushed harder than the car's abilities allowed. Number 3, 1981 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. The 1981 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 featured third-generation styling that looked genuinely exotic, but underneath lived emissions-strangled engines, producing between 175 and 190 horsepower. The Z28's appearance promised Corvette-level performance, but the reality was genuinely dangerous because expectations vastly exceeded capability, creating hazardous mismatches between what drivers expected and what the car could actually deliver. The 350 cubic inch V8 was available, but strangled by emissions equipment and conservative tuning. Even the most powerful version produced just 190 horsepower, genuinely weak output that created sluggish acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the mid-16-second range were disappointing, placing the Z28 among the slower cars, wearing performance credentials and legendary badging. The danger came from styling creating impossible expectations. The third-generation Camaro looked genuinely exotic with its wedge-shaped profile, flush glass, and aggressive proportions. The design suggested European supercar rather than American muscle, creating expectations of performance that the strangled engines simply couldn't deliver. Drivers seeing the Z28 expected quick acceleration and responsive performance, but reality was crushing disappointment. The handling was adequate with independent rear suspension, providing better control than competitors, but the weight approached 3,400 pounds, and the modest power meant sluggish acceleration that contradicted every visual cue. The brakes were adequate, but nothing special. The Z28 was dangerous because it looked genuinely fast, encouraging driving styles the underpowered drivetrain couldn't support. The reputation damage was severe. Buyers expecting legendary Z28 performance found malaise-era compromise, creating dangerous situations when capability gaps became apparent. Number 2, 1980 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Turbo. The 1980 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Turbo takes second position because it combined turbo power with reliability issues that made it genuinely dangerous. The 301 cubic inch turbocharged V8 produced 210 horsepower, decent output for 1980. But turbo lag and mechanical problems created unpredictable behavior that could catch drivers by surprise at the worst possible moments. The turbocharged 301 delivered power in waves rather than smoothly. At low throttle, the Trans Am felt genuinely slow, with modest, naturally aspirated power providing minimal acceleration. But when boost built, the character transformed completely with sudden acceleration that felt violent compared to the previous docile behavior. The transition between off-boost and on-boost was abrupt, creating unpredictable power delivery that made smooth driving difficult. The danger came from turbo lag and reliability problems plaguing the system. The turbocharger and related components proved troublesome, with failures that could occur without warning. Boost control issues could cause overboosting that damaged engines or sudden power surges that overwhelmed traction. The cooling system struggled with turbo heat, creating overheating problems during sustained hard driving or hot weather operation. The handling was typical for second-generation Firebirds, adequate but nothing special. The live rear axle could break loose suddenly when boost came on, especially on anything less than perfect pavement. The brakes were adequate for normal driving but marginal during aggressive use. The Trans Am Turbo was dangerous because the unpredictable power delivery and reliability issues created situations where the car behaved unexpectedly, catching drivers off guard when turbo boost hit suddenly or when mechanical failures occurred at speed. Number 1, 1980 Chevrolet Corvette California 305. The 1980 Chevrolet Corvette California 305 takes the top position as the most dangerous 80s muscle car because it betrayed everything the Corvette nameplate represented. California emissions regulations forced Chevrolet to offer a 305 cubic inch V8, producing just 180 horsepower in America's sports car, creating something dangerously slow that wore the most legendary performance badge while delivering acceleration that couldn't match family sedans. The 305 was strangled by California emissions equipment that killed any performance potential. 180 horsepower was genuinely pathetic for a Corvette, creating acceleration that felt inadequate in every situation. The C3 Corvette body weighed over 3,300 pounds, and the anemic engine meant genuinely sluggish performance. Quarter-mile times approached 17 seconds, genuinely slow performance that placed the California Corvette among the weakest sports cars available and created genuinely dangerous situations. The danger came from Corvette expectations versus California 305 reality. Buyers purchasing Corvettes expected sports car performance, quick acceleration, responsive handling, and capabilities justifying the premium pricing and legendary nameplate. But California 305 buyers found family sedan performance wrapped in sports car styling, creating crushing disappointment and genuinely hazardous situations when the Corvette couldn't deliver expected capability. The handling was typical for C3 Corvettes, adequate but compromised by age and weight. The suspension featured independent rear but was soft and designed more for comfort than aggressive driving. The brakes were adequate for normal use but marginal during spirited driving when the Corvette's weight created momentum difficult to control. The steering was vague and slow, providing minimal feedback about what the front tires were doing. The California 305 was dangerous because it was genuinely too slow for safe sports car driving. Merging onto highways required planning because acceleration was inadequate. Passing slower traffic required long stretches of clear road because overtaking capability was minimal. The combination of heavy weight, anemic power, and Corvette badge created situations where drivers expected performance that simply didn't exist, leading to dangerous situations when capability gaps became apparent at exactly the wrong moments. The California 305 represented Corvette at its absolute lowest point. America's sports car reduced to emissions-strangled embarrassment that betrayed decades of performance heritage. Buyers expecting Corvette performance found malaise-era compromise, creating not just disappointment, but genuinely dangerous situations when the vast gap between expectations and reality became apparent. The California 305 was dangerous because it wore a badge promising capabilities it simply couldn't deliver. These 15 dangerous 80s muscle cars proved that the malaise era created hazards beyond just disappointing performance. Some were dangerous because they were too slow, creating situations where inadequate power couldn't meet modern traffic demands. Others were dangerous because they were too fast, without modern safety systems containing the violence. All of them represented American performance at its most treacherous moment, emerging from the dark ages, but not yet equipped with the technology making that power manageable. Which of these dangerous legends would you dare to drive? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you love stories about muscle cars that demanded respect, hit that subscribe button for